All right, so I'm back with another video today. This one is going to be a video just comparing Royal Taboo from French Avenue to Creed Centaurus. So I finally have gotten my hands on a sample of Centaurus and have worn, Centaurus side by side with the Fragrance World or French Avenue's Royal Taboo. And I'm just going to be going over my sort of thoughts in terms of how these two compare. All right. So if you're looking for like the presentation and stuff like that, I have gone over that within the original video that I did on this, or like my first impressions, I want to say, is what I did a video on for this. So definitely refer to that video to get like the presentation and stuff like that. This is just strictly going to be, just a straight sort of comparison between the French Avenue Royal Taboo and Creed Centaurus. So also the notes for Centaurus, they are pretty similar to the notes of Royal Taboo, but just slightly different. Also refer to the Royal Taboo notes in the original video that I did. But for the notes for Centaurus, those are going to be in the top notes: cinnamon, tobacco, cardamom, and pink pepper. In the mid, you have sandalwood, patchouli, heliotrope, geranium, and jasmine. And then in the base, you have benzoin, bourbon vanilla, tonka bean, Toulouse balsam, and ambroxan. All right. So how do these two compare? So I would say that this is a very good interpretation of Creed Centaurus. Like if I'm talking about, how close this comes to Creed Centaurus, I would say that this is probably about like 90% at best, about 85 to 90% close for the most part to Creed Centaurus. Smell wise, it does smell, very similar to it. And I mean, there are definitely some sort of slight differences between the two fragrances, but again, those are just slight differences. Now, the main difference that I get from the two fragrances, both when I wear these on skin as well as, when I just smell these on like a tester strip, is the Creed definitely has the better blend quality, than what the French Avenue does. Now, I do kind of think that more than likely what may end up happening with this Royal Taboo is, as this sort of sits and maturates, it will start to become, a little bit more richer, definitely stronger, like in terms of like the longevity as well as the projection. I think all those things will start to happen, as this kind of sits on my shelf for a couple of months. But as it stands right now, just straight out of the box, it is definitely, weaker in performance. And it's also not as rich and, again, as well blended as what the Creed is. As far as the blend quality, I don't see that getting to be where the Creed is, because, obviously it's Creed. But I do think that, in terms of like some of the richness of, some of the notes in the Royal Taboo, I do see that maybe getting a little bit better. Now, what I'm referring to is, when I say the richness, definitely the richness of like the cinnamon and the tobacco and the Creed is noticeably better than what it is in the Royal Taboo. Also, to me, the Royal Taboo, it comes off as a little bit more like woods heavy than what the Creed does. The Creed definitely has like a really nice balance of, how they've blended like the spices, the tobacco, the woods, and then also the floral notes within Centaurus. So it just comes off as, like I said, a more sort of richer, slightly more higher quality fragrance than what the Royal Taboo does. But I mean, do I necessarily think that this is a difference that you could really tell in the air, especially if they were both like at the same strength? Not really. I mean, I do think that the difference in terms of the projection is something that you could probably notice within the air. But in terms of just, the actual smell itself, I don't necessarily see it being too much of a difference to where, you would absolutely be able to tell that somebody had on Royal Taboo as opposed to, you know, Creed Centaurus. But yeah, man, those are the main differences I would say in terms of the smell that I get. It's just the tobacco is so much more richer and more prominent to me in the Creed Centaurus than what it is in Royal Taboo. And also the cinnamon, to me, it just comes off as, just to me, higher quality smelling, to be honest. Now, as far as like the floral notes in the Royal Taboo, to me, the heliotrope is also not as rich in the Royal Taboo as what it is in the Creed. So, I mean, those are the main differences that I would say. And then also, you know, again, this does seem to be a little bit more woodier just overall, you know, throughout the entire fragrance than what the Creed Centaurus is. So very minimal differences. There are definitely differences that you have to, you know, smell side by side and, you know, up close on your skin to really be able to tell. But, you know, I mean, I think would the average person necessarily be able to tell the difference? Like if you sprayed the Royal Taboo on like one side of their body and then you sprayed the Creed Centaurus on the other. I mean, maybe not. Like I said, the differences are very minimal. And I think for most people, you know, you would probably have to have like a trained nose to really be able to tell the difference. So, you know, I mean, for this to only be a fraction of the cost of the Creed and, you know, for it to come about 90% close to the Creed in terms of just the overall smell and, you know, the quality, I would say that, you know, this is a very, very good interpretation. Now, for the performance, to me, the performance on this so far has not been as good as what the Creed has. And honestly, the Creed Centaurus so far for me has been like the best performing Creed fragrance that I've, you know, tried out. You know, all of the fresher Creeds, they all seem to, you know, I guess with the exception of like Absolute Aventus, which I guess it's debatable whether or not you could consider that one necessarily a freshie. But every other Creed fragrance that, you know, I've, you know, worn on myself, it really hasn't lasted more than like around, I would say more than 3 to 5 hours or so. So this definitely does a lot better, the actual Creed Centaurus. This easily lasts over 8 hours on my skin, whereas the French Avenue Royal Taboo, this is only about like 6 hours maximum for the most part, I would say so far. And I mean, I've had this fragrance now for, I want to say at least several weeks now, probably like 3 weeks or so. So, I mean, I've had it for some time now. Now, obviously with French Avenue fragrances, you know, not all of them, but some of them, you know, from my experience, they sort of take, you know, sometimes months to really, you know, fully sort of maturate, you know, just depending on the fragrance. So this could be one of those fragrances that, you know, maybe by the time we hit April or so, you know, it may be doing a lot better in terms of the performance as well as the projection. But at least so far, like I said, this one only lasts about 6 hours. And then in terms of the projection is also a lot better on the Creed as well. The Creed to me so far has been, I won't say double the projection or strength, you know, as what Royal Taboo is, but it definitely seems a lot more noticeable than, you know, what the Royal Taboo does on my skin anyway. So, I mean, to me, the Royal Taboo, you know, in terms of strength, is probably dialed back about, I don't know, maybe 40%, you know, from what the Creed is on my skin. Like I said, this is definitely, this is the best performing Creed fragrance that, you know, I've tried out of all of the other Creed fragrances. And I mean, I've tried, you know, just about every other Creed really that you can think of, you know, other than, you know, like the really sort of older Creeds that have been discontinued, or, you know, some of the lesser popular Creeds anyway. But for the most part, most of the main Creed fragrances I've actually worn and tried on my skin, and they really don't last that long on me at all. So like I said, this is one of the rare instances where, you know, inspired fragrance of a Creed fragrance actually hasn't performed better than, you know, what the original did on me. So that's the performance. Like I said, in terms of, you know, my sort of closeness rating on, you know, Royal Taboo when compared to Centaurus, I would give this one about a 90%, you know. Again, it's definitely a very good interpretation. I feel like for the most part, you are kind of getting the same experience, you know, with the French Avenue Royal Taboo. It's just that, you know, the Creed is going to smell like the more richer, more expensive and higher quality fragrance over the French Avenue. So, I mean, that is to be expected, you know, definitely for sure. Especially with this fragrance, I think retail, this is like $500. I think, you know, I saw a full presentation, you know, Creed Centaurus on Joma Shop for like $400. So this is not a cheap fragrance at all. So, you know, I think for this to only be, I believe this is like $60 on Joma Shop for 100 ml. You know, as compared to the Creed, which is like 500, you know, retail, or 400 if you get it from Joma Shop. That's a huge difference in cost. And, you know, this definitely comes extremely close to the original. Like I said, it just lacks a little bit of the richness, lacks a little bit of the refinement that you get from the Creed. And then the performance is just so far not as good. But definitely a really good alternative for Centaurus. You know, so far this is the only Centaurus, you know, interpretation that I know of. Definitely let me know in the comments if you all know of any other, you know, fragrances that are, you know, inspired by Centaurus as well. But I do think that more than likely this probably will be about the best one that you can find. You know, even though this one is 90% close, I don't necessarily see anybody, you know, getting exactly to where, you know, the quality of the Creed is. So, you know, I think, you know, at the end of the day, this is still a very good value alternative. All right. So in terms of my sort of just overall rating on this fragrance, this I would say is easily like a 8.5 out of 10, you know. I do like the scent profile just in general. It is a very nice fragrance, especially to wear around this time of the year. I would definitely say like probably late fall, winter, and then like early spring would be like the best times to kind of reach for this fragrance. So, you know, it does have a decent amount of versatility. Wouldn't necessarily reach for this one in the summertime out here in Vegas, but maybe you could reach for this on a summer night if you live in more of sort of like a moderate climate. All right. So that's my take and my sort of final thoughts on Royal Taboo from French Avenue. Again, this is a very solid interpretation of Centaurus. You're just going to be lacking a little bit of the performance as well as the quality that you get from the Creed. All right. So definitely let me know in the comments what you all thought about Royal Taboo from French Avenue. And also if you all have actually smelled this fragrance side by side with the original Creed, definitely let me know if you all agree with my assessment of how close this comes to the Creed, as well as just, you know, my thoughts on the differences between the two. All right. Also, I'll have links in the description to where you can pick both the Royal Taboo up as well as the original Creed. And if you're brand new to the channel, do me a favor, go ahead and subscribe. And again, that's Jamar from Vegas Scents. I'll see y'all in the next video.